Greetings. I am Dr. James Duban. I'm the Associate Dean for Research and Nationally Competitive Scholarships in TAMS and the Honors College. Today, I am going to address the question how does an undergraduate locate a research mentor? Mine is but one of many perspectives that students will encounter. But what I can assure you is that the many students whom I've coached on this topic have more often than not eventually located a research mentor by using the techniques that I'm about to describe. Um, so, one does not have to be either in TAMS, Texas Academy of Mathematics and Science, or in the Honors College to benefit from this presentation. It's for every UNT undergraduate who realizes the benefits of research based undergraduate education. And before I pretty much prescribe an approach to locating a research mentor, let me briefly review some of those benefits. People look for a research mentor for a host of reasons, most of which these days are fairly pragmatic. Um, they want to get into medical school. They think it's going to be great on their resume. They hope to become a PA. They hope to enter graduate school with fellowship funding. And there's nothing wrong with any of those incentives or motives, but they do somehow evade the main reasons why somebody should be seeking a research experience spanning hopefully up to a year and beyond that 2.5 more years. And I will add in the interim that we have for all UNT undergraduates, not just for TAMS and the Honors College, we have the Undergraduate Research Fellowship that starts up every January. And stay tuned for more information about that because that formalizes a relationship with a research mentor, otherwise called a PI, uh, otherwise called your professor who guides the research, the principal investigator. And the reasons why students should want to conduct research, the ideal reasons pertain to the fact that when one conducts undergraduate research, as an undergraduate, you aspire to contribute new knowledge to your field of study. That's really the the main goal of anybody's conducting research, undergraduate, graduate student, or professor. Uh, but as far as being an undergraduate goes, and to a large extent being a graduate student as well, what you aspire to learn is research methodology. That, yes, you're still taking classes, and yes, you should benefit from all the book knowledge at your disposal. No question about it. But in yesteryear, undergraduates commonly had to wait until they started graduate school to acquire research methodology. But now the national trend is for undergraduates to have beyond the classroom research experience. And that occurs when a student um, enters a lab, a team, a one on one relationship with a professor on a specific topic, no matter what the field of study. But in any of those scenarios, what the undergraduate is seeking is the professor's research methodology that you're not going to get in a textbook. So you may not stick with that methodology your entire life, but you will learn the discipline of the discipline. Think about that. The discipline of your discipline by engaging in research, but in learning a particular professor's methodology. And then there are a few other benefits of great import. Uh, One learns in the course of conducting research how to deal with failure, hopefully success, but not everything pans out the way we wish. And people have to go back to the proverbial chalkboard. Um, and that's a good thing to learn how to do. And finally, just for purposes of this overview of the ideal reasons one conducts research, I would add the social benefits of an undergraduate research experience. In order to succeed on a team or in a lab, one truly must be a sociable person. That in many STEM labs or on many social science teams, there are multiple people, and they're all supportive of one another. They're all encouraging of one another, and any undergraduate who enters uh, that family, let's call it a family, comes out with vastly superior social skills and realizes that being a sociable and contributive and supportive member of a team is, in the main, what what that experience is about. And I have had several colleagues tell me that if somebody is on a research team and they're not sociable, they really won't last all that long. Okay, so on the other hand, you have the pragmatic benefits of conducting research, the letter of recommendation, and frankly, who else other than a PI is going to know enough about you to write a 2-page, single spaced, comprehensive letter of recommendation, perhaps with double spacing between paragraphs. It's your principal investigator. Most other professors might speak to how well you did on exams or what a an illustrious paper you wrote for their class, but it's only the PI who can speak to the quality of your investigative mind, your ability to form either uh, a hypothesis in the sciences or a thesis in the paper that you may write as a result of having undertaken research. And by the way, notice the similarity between hypothesis and thesis um, just varies for the discipline in which you're enrolled, right? Okay, so the question then becomes one of how do I locate a research mentor? And in my opinion, the way not to do this, but the way most undergraduates approach this challenge is to send out 30 emails all at the same time to 30 different professors asking if you can be a member of their team, their lab, or simply conduct research one-on-one if you're in the humanities or the performing or visual arts. I think that is an awful way to approach professors. It's difficult to locate a professor who wants to take undergraduates into his or her lab. Frankly, easier at UNT because that's a growing part of our culture than it is at many other research universities. Um, you will never see, for example, a professor with a picket sign walking around the mall outside of the main library on campus with that sign reading, desperately needed a freshman to join my lab of graduate students and postdocs. No, you're not going to see that. This has to be at your instigation, uh, and you've got to show a great deal of studied knowledge and perseverance in approaching this topic. And many students don't do that. Well, what do I mean by studied knowledge and perseverance? I mean, you've really got to do research on the professors in your field of study before you approach them one by one. And I'll describe what I deem to be the best way of doing that. Okay, so let's just say, and each of you, whether you're an incoming freshman or a second semester junior, or sometimes a first semester senior, but I wouldn't wait that long, frankly. Um, each of you falls within the spectrum of how this works or can work optimally. So once you know your field of study, once you've declared a major, or if you're in a program where, for all practical purposes, you are declaring a major without declaring a major, that would be the Texas Academy of Mathematics and Science, for example. What you do is you ask yourself, to what area of academia am I attracted by virtue of my major? And how do I go about locating a professor whose interests in that department correspond to my interests, at least at this time in my academic development, because those will your interests will change. Um, However, once you've identified the basic interest, you simply go to your computer, easier these days than ever before, and you type in University of North Texas, and let's just pick Department of Biological Sciences, but it could just as easily be Department of Theater Arts, Department of History, um, Department of you name it. But you just enter that in Google, hit enter, and not only will that department pop up, but at the top rim you'll see a number of tabs, and one of them will be faculty. So you click on faculty, and for example, in biological sciences, about 40 pictures of faculty members will pop up. And to the right of those pictures will be their names and a brief description of what they teach and what they research. So you read through that list and you then make a smaller list of the 7 faculty members who, at least on the basis of that preliminary indication of what they're teaching and what they themselves are researching, you'll end up with a list of 7 faculty members. But that's just the beginning, because you go back to that homepage of the department and you'll find another prompt that reads faculty profile. Faculty profile. And you click on the faculty profile of your leading professor, whom you think is going to be an ideal person under whom to conduct research. And what the faculty profile will bring up, among other documents, is the most recent iteration of that professor's resume, otherwise vita, otherwise curriculum vitae. And for your purposes, the most important part of that resume will be publications. And you go to the publications, and there'll be a section of the resume that's clearly marked publications. It will be a combination in most fields of study of journal articles and books. What you do is you look for the 2 most recent journal articles. Books are great, but sometimes they're 10 years in the making. So you may not have access to the professor's most recent thinking in his or her book in progress. If you do, well, get a copy of that book out of the library and read a few chapters of it, especially if it's very recent. And you'll see why that's important in a few minutes. But otherwise, most students will have access to the recent journal articles of the professor. And by having access, I mean not just the name of the article and the journal in which it's published and the page span, which you can get, of course, from their resume, but you'll have access to the document because the UNT library system spends well over $1 million each year paying different companies a considerable fees so that our professors here can have access to the most recent articles published in their field of study, because the professors need to cite those in their own research. But those articles are available to you by virtue of your having a UNT ID number. You can go online and you can, just as easily as they, click on those articles. And after you've picked your 7 and you've arranged those 7 in the order that you think is going to be productive, were you admitted in one of those labs. So you go to that professor's resume, you learn about his or her 2 most recent articles, and then you go online through the UNT library system, and you closely read at least 1, but hopefully up to 2 of those recent articles. In fact, if I were you, I'd print them out and I'd read them with a highlighter, a pen. I would underline, I would annotate. I would really study those 2 articles and come to an understanding of what the central contribution is. There's no reason that a professor should be published in any field unless he or she is adding new knowledge to the field of study. So the question you want to ask yourself as you go through those articles is, what's the new knowledge? Why did this article get accepted in the first instance for publication? What new knowledge does it convey? And how does the professor, in his or her methodology, go about unearthing, disclosing, and arguing the case for advancing what the professor takes to be new knowledge that goes beyond the status quo of existing knowledge in the field of study? So you really study those two articles. And then what you do is you locate on the faculty profile, you locate the office hours of that professor. A professor must be in his or her office hours, usually 3 hours a week. And relatively few undergraduates take advantage of office hours. Office hours are an open invitation to drop by. You do not need an appointment. You do not need to let the professor know you're coming in advance via an email. But you've done your homework now, and you know when the office hours are. If you still can't find the office hours, just call the academic department front desk people and ask them, what are the office hours? They'll tell you. You show up, knock on the door, the professor admits you, and right off the bat, you smile and you say, hello, my name is, and I am majoring in, and you use this, our field of study. See, you're already all in. Majoring in, and you just name the field of study. And without a pause, you say, and I have read your two most recent articles on this and that. And I really enjoyed learning new things about this and that. And while I may not have understood every dimension of your argument, I feel that by working on your team, in your lab, one-on-one with you, that I can come to understand that and more. And I just would like to let you know that I would be very pleased to join your research team in any capacity that can help advance your research. It's not about you. It's about the faculty members' project and your wish to help advance that any way that you can. And everything I just described, from the moment the door opens to the moment you conclude with any way I can help advance your research, should last no more than 30 seconds. And at the end of those 30 seconds and your last utterance, you stop talking, but you retain your smile. Just stop talking. Don't fear the silence. First, the professor will be both flattered and sometimes flabbergasted that, oh my goodness, an undergraduate has read my two most recent articles. And these professors will be all too delighted to chat with you. And just let them do most of the talking, but answer when the professor expects you to speak. Say something that intimates the joy that you would take in participating in that kind of inquiry. And if the professor asks if you have any questions. Don't ask base, self-interested questions. Ask questions that, and by that, uh, excuse me, when will I hear from you? You'll hear from them when they want you to hear from them. Um, do not ask if this pays. That's not why you want research as an undergraduate. You want research to learn professional methodology. And the questions that you should ask should pertain to something that you've read about the research and say, well, I recall a part of the article that talks about this particular piece of equipment. And I was wondering, I've never seen that piece of equipment. And um, what's it like? How long does it take to master the usage of? And it would show that you're just dying to get in there and do the work of that discipline. And if you use this approach that stands to generate that level of dialogue with the professor, and this level of dialogue can span STEM, the social sciences, the humanities, and the performing arts or the visual arts. And in the performing arts and the visual arts, professors frequently regard productions. If somebody directs a play, or if somebody has an exhibit hanging on the walls of such and such gallery, then do that research and locate that exhibit or internet accounts of that exhibit. It's all the same. You're showing the professor, the PI, that you are all in, and particularly with regard to their research. Okay, so you may get one of 3 or 4 answers. A professor can say, oh, gee, you sound so interesting, but my lab is full at this point. But if you check back with me next semester, maybe some of those students will have graduated. Okay, I've seen that happen. But you say thank you and you keep that in mind. Or the professor may say, as I've seen in the past, because usually you don't work one-on-one with the PI. Usually the PI assigns you to a graduate student or a postdoc. And the professor may say, I've got to speak to one of my graduate students to see if they would be interested in taking you on. And that's fine. That's the way most lab experiences work. Whereas in the humanities, you'll end up in the library uh, immersed in reading for 3 weeks and coming up for air once in a while. Okay. Um, but, or the professor may say, this has been really engaging. Yes, I want you on my research team. We'll start Monday. And those are the range of responses that can occur if you use this technique. Now, the number of hours that you should be willing to work outside of the classroom during the fall and spring semesters would be roughly 6 to 8 hours a week. Professors during the long semesters, that is fall and spring, don't expect much more, though I've known undergraduates that go up to 13 hours a week. But the professors don't expect that during the fall and the spring because they realize you're carrying 4 to 5 courses along with doing this kind of research. Okay. So you leave the office, shake hands with a firm handshake. No spongy handshakes. A firm handshake, which says to PIs and future employers, I'm a player. Have a firm handshake, but smile and say, I look forward to hearing from you if you haven't received a definite answer. Okay, so you wait 2 full days. If you've heard nothing, you are then at liberty to repeat the process with the second professor on your list. And I need not go through that process again because it's identical to what I just said. You don't want to be contacting more than one professor at a time because let's say you contact two on the same day or whatever, and if one of them offers you a position and you have said, this is what I really want to be doing, and then the professor gets back to you and says, okay, I can take you in, and the other professor has said, yes, I can take you in. Well, that's a good way to disenchant the other professor with whom you may have to study in a course in your major someday. But just as a human being to another human being, you don't want to either appear to have used somebody or actually have used them and then abandon them when you got a better offer the same day or the next day. So wait 2 full days, and that pretty much releases you from the responsibility of accepting the first offer should it come in. Or if you accept it on day 3 after you've interviewed with somebody and you've waited 2 full days, and then on the next day you accept and you get the first offer, then in good conscience you can say, oh, it would have been wonderful to work with you, but when I didn't hear from you, I approached Professor so and so and he or she took me in. And at this point, I guess the most I can hope for is to take a course with you, and I look forward to doing that. In other words, don't make gratuitous enemies. Uh, do this in a conscientious way. So, the method I've just described stands in stark contrast, does it not, to the average incoming freshman who, eager to begin research, will send out a blanket email to 30 different professors and then wonder why he or she seldom, I'm not going to say never, but why he or she seldom hears back. So I just don't believe that the most productive method is the mass email method, especially in an age when students have come to recognize that to get into medical school or graduate school, they really do need to be able to demonstrate that they've been in a research environment. Now, I also recommend that an incoming student feel anchored in his or her studies before they pursue research. That you don't want to be taking 8 hours to run off to somebody's team or lab if you're struggling with your coursework. Postpone your research for such time as you feel moored, anchored in your field of study. And then seek out the research opportunities. And if you do it this way, you'll have the benefit of knowing that you're succeeding academically and that you have entered a research environment that stands to open multiple doors in the future. Students who conduct research are, in my opinion, enhancing by about 80% their capacity when they graduate with their bachelor's degree to receive fellowship based offers from universities to come to their university to earn their combined master's and PhD credentials. Because these days, most universities are able to fund the most contributive graduating seniors to conduct advanced research in their PhD programs. And by PhD programs, I mean one that traditionally wraps the master's degree into the PhD. Well, how do you know if somebody's contributive and stands to be a great graduate student? On the basis of grades? Not really, because people can earn a very high GPA and never have conducted authentic beyond the classroom research. So most graduate schools, when deciding beyond admissions whom to fund with money that they almost always have, limited resources to be sure, but still they have those, they will look to the student who has conducted undergraduate research. And they'll look for a letter of recommendation from that professor attesting to what the student has accomplished in the research lab. And it's just also a fact that students who conduct undergraduate research are far more likely to gain internal university fellowship support for their graduate degrees and not have to worry about the expense of graduate school. Um, and also are have infinitely better odds of succeeding in such competitions as the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship, the Harry S. Truman Scholarship, the Barry M. Goldwater Scholarship for sophomores and juniors, the Gates Cambridge Fellowship. Um, all of these global scholarships and fellowships do, to a large measure, reward students who have gone beyond the classroom to conduct research outside of the classroom. And finally, what I will add is that the Honors College at the University of North Texas has pretty much structured what we call the Undergraduate Research Fellowship to help you formalize a research relationship with a research mentor. And a student does not have to be, even though we hope they will eventually be, an honors college student to take advantage of this. They can be in any department on campus. They can be in the honors college or not. They can be in the Texas Academy of Mathematics and Science or not, and still apply for the URF, the Undergraduate Research Fellowship. You can Google that right now and see what it is. The deadline for the current academic year has passed, though if you're watching this video in the future, it may not have passed by the time but just Google University of North Texas Undergraduate Research Fellowship. And you see how we have a very formal way of documenting your constructive encounter on a team, in a lab, one-on-one, with a research mentor in any field of study. And it's a wonderful thing to be a URF scholar. More and more undergraduates are listing that on their resumes. So, my friends, I have offered my perspective on how to go about seeking a research assignment. Do not be discouraged if you do not locate research immediately. This is a process that may take several weeks or a month or maybe a month or two. But most undergraduates who use this technique, the one I've described, have been successful in locating that research. And finally, I'll add that if you are in the Honors College or in the Texas Academy of Mathematics and Science, and you need not be in either to be a URF scholar. But if you are in either TAMS or the Honors College, we have $4,000 scholarships to allow you to stay on campus. They're competitive scholarships. You have to compete. But if you're successful in competing, you have enough money to stay on campus during the summer and devote up to 40 hours a week to research on the team or in the lab that for which you've been working 5 to 8 hours during the fall and spring semesters, building your credentials. The number of doors that open through research are just incredible, just incredible. So I want each of you who is listening to this Zoom session, whether now or in the future, I want you to succeed academically and in a research environment. And my friends, this has been my perspective on how to do that.